Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to do the photo bashing in Krita now. I'm just going to use the same images that I used before and just basically do the exact same stuff, just using this program instead. So I'm going to drag in my Appalachian Mountains background, which is going to create a new file just like that on a single layer. Some differences between Krita and Photoshop. Krita does not lock the initial layer, nor does it make it any kind of special layer, so it's not a file layer or lock layer of any kind. I'm just going to go ahead and drag in my other reference files here. I noticed that there are some options when dragging this in. A new layer is just putting the pixels inside of this document, plain and ordinary, just like you would expect. A insert as new file layer, this is an interesting one because it's a little bit like a smart object in that it prevents you from harming the initial image. So I'll go ahead and pick that one just for a kind of difference, and I'll show you what is different about that. For one thing, we've got a different icon here to indicate that this is a file layer, as well as over here on the far right hand side, and I can't paint on it. It won't let me. If I try to use the transform tool, it won't let me use the transform tool. But we can use the movement tool. I'm not sure if I can scale this though, which would be sort of a deal breaker. So if I'm not allowed to scale it, let me just try that real quick. Let's see, transform, scale layer to new size. Okay, well I have to do this through this pop-up because normally I would use my transform tool, and I don't think I am allowed to. Yeah, I can move the background. Okay, so a little unfortunate in that I can't scale this, it seems, freely. So maybe I don't want to use a file layer for this, even though it would be guaranteeing that we don't damage the original. Let me take a look at these options here. Position, move layer with content, move layer with group. Yeah, that doesn't really mean anything. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this layer then and just place it as a normal layer in that case. The only downside of that would be if I make this larger, I'm going to lose resolution permanently, or if I make it very small and then large again, then I would lose detail. Okay, so just be aware of that. Don't do a lot of scaling if you have to place this in Krita, because that will really mess up the pixels. Just for an example, to show you the kind of damage that you can do, I'll go ahead and duplicate this layer. Oops, didn't want to move it. Let me go ahead and just duplicate. Okay, so I've got this one saved now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink this really far down like that and commit that change. And now I'm going to make it large again by scaling it back up. Let's see if we get it. Actually, it looks fine. You know what? Maybe Krita is a much smarter program than I thought, or I'm working in a much higher resolution than I thought. Let me turn the other one on. Yeah, I don't see any difference at all. So I think that Krita is just a much smarter program than I expected, in that it's protecting it from degradation by remembering what the original resolution of this layer was. So that's really good news. You don't even have to worry about that. So nice kind of feature there. Let's go ahead and get the layer mask on this. So we would be placing this somewhere in the background. Probably want to turn down the opacity just like we did before to be able to see what we're placing it on top of back there. So something like right here could kind of integrate nicely into this hillside. To apply a layer mask, we can right click this and add a transparency mask. So that's going to give us this little nested layer here, and this is the same as in Photoshop. So a black and white layer that will allow us to paint black to remove and paint white to add. So if I want to use brushes for this, I actually have some sort of paint brush applied right now, but you can see it's removing the background just like that. And if I flip my colors, then I can add right back in again. Probably don't want to be using such a complicated brush for this though. So I'll switch over to digital brushes and just use this transparency locked one, or the size locked one. Okay, so I can once again go through and just quickly mask out the background if I want, like this, or same way that I did in Photoshop, we can use a Polygon Selection tool or a outline selection tool, which is just freeform. We change the color. The colors are a different option. So if you're talking about the adjustment layer, we'll do that in a little bit. What this is just a layer mask. And you can see that when I click on the layer itself, it actually hides it. There's a small little arrow right here that will show it, and this is where I'm doing the work. Black and white are really all you paint with on this, because you either want to hide something or you don't. So just like that, I'll go ahead and, oh, that was backspace will fill in your back color in Krita, and delete will fill in your foreground color. But for color adjustments, we're going to do a different thing. Okay? So really quick, I'm just going to basically block out this so that we would be ready to place it on the background. Again, not doing a very, very careful job, because we like to do this in passes so that we don't lose a lot of hard work if something goes wrong. So just like that, I'm just grabbing each successive bit of this, and then I would go in very carefully to remove all this. I'll go ahead and show the function of that both with this free selection tool, which would be just carefully tracing up the side just like this, and also with the Polygon Selection tool, which is this one right here. Click, click, click. Just like that, so that I can remove parts. Lilia, I don't know what you're looking for. Paint using mask. Okay, so you're looking for the option that I just turned on. With your photograph layer selected, you just right-click, add transparency mask. That's what I did. Just right-click, add transparency mask. And then it will be right here. So I'll go through nice and quick and get my correct tool back and mask this out, at least just generally, so that we can get the idea. So I'll just do kind of a sloppy job. And remember, the really big benefit is that if I want to come back and make this nicer, I could very, very easily, just by adding white to this layer, or filling the entire area with white and trying again from the start to remask it. I'll just go around this. And I also recommend doing this in smaller chunks. Right now I'm just doing a very quick job so that we can speed through this, because you already did see this process in Photoshop. So this is really just about the new tools with the slightly different tool settings. Okay, so there's that part, and then coming down this side. Yeah, that'll do it. And we'll have little bits of things left over because I'm doing it so carelessly, but that should be fine. I think you guys get the point so far. And then I don't know how far I want this one to go down, but we'll first find out. Okay, so there we are. We've cut it out. Okay, so our castle is cut out. And then down on the bottom here, this would be the same process as before, where I would use some sort of brush to remove the rock so that it fades into the trees. I will pick some sort of rougher looking brush, sort of like this one or this one maybe, for this task. Painting with black. Let's make it a little bit larger. And I would just sort of remove parts that I know for sure I want covered, and try to make it a little bit rough and haphazard so that it doesn't look like this is just jutting straight out of the tree line, but that it is encompassed by it slightly. This is not a very transparent brush, so I'm actually going to flip over to a different one. Let's try this one. Same thing here. Not a lot of these are very transparent. Let's try this one. There we go. That one's got a lot more. More transparency is more forgiving, but can also look very unnatural. So just be aware of that. So kind of just patting these edges to make them look a little bit rough while removing bits that would be covered by trees. And if I do a little mess up, like I think I went a little bit too far here, and I'd like to fill that back in, I'm going to change my color to white and paint back down right over the top of that, just like that. Go back to black. Remove a little bit more. So something like this. We'll just try to get that foliage to blend in. Okay. Cool. Alright, so those are the first couple of steps. Now we would need to adjust the color and the brightness of this. And so by selecting this layer, if we come up to Filter, Adjust, we've got a bunch of different options here, and I took a quick look at them to find out which ones I thought were going to be best for this. Hsv Adjustment means Hue Saturation Value Adjustment. So if you just want to change the colors entirely, you can do that one. Color Balance is very similar to what I was using before. Here we've got shadows, midtones, and highlights, and cyan, magenta, yellow sliders instead of RGB. Actually, here's RGB over on the other side. So I could change the shadows to be, if I try to remember, I think I made them a little bit more blue, and the midtones a little bit more red, magenta, yellow, and then highlights, I think it was yellow. Something like that, I believe. Let's see if I can get this. That looks a little bit overbearing right now, but those are the adjustments. So let me see what happens if I hit OK. I've got a bunch of buttons here at the bottom. If I hit OK, it's going to change the pixels on this layer, and they're never going to go back, and I won't be able to adjust them. But we've got this second button here for Create Filter Mask, and that's actually the one that you would want to hit. Okay, so if I do that, then I've got this color balance mask right here that I can turn off and on again. And I believe if I double click it, I think. Let's see, how do I readjust it if I wanted to change those settings? I thought it was just double click, but it doesn't appear to me. Try this. Properties. There we go, properties. So right click to get properties. And I get these sliders back, and they're still on the settings that I had established, so I could change them to some other setting now. Okay. So that's what we would want to do. Okay, so that's one part of this where we can use this color balance layer. I also want to show that down here at the bottom of the layers palette, viewer change layer properties. There you go. That would be the same thing where we can access the properties of that filter. We've got down here where we would normally add a layer in Krita. If I hit this small down-facing arrow, we do have filter layers that we can just put right here from the layers palette instead of going through the filter menu. So if I choose that, then it's sort of asking me what sort of filter do I want to apply. And I found that this cross-channel color adjustment was about as close as I could get to the curves in Photoshop. And it all starts sort of a default of 50% or whatever this is. But if you drag down this first button, actually you have to change what is being affected. Right now it says saturation is being affected. That's not what we want. We don't want to affect the lightness. There we go. So if I drag down this first one, we can see everything's getting darker. Now everything's getting lighter. We can see it's affecting the whole image, but not really relegating itself just to our castle. I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK. That's because this is not a part of this group. This needs to be a part of a quick mask group. So if I select this copy of castle, or actually I think I can just drag this into this group right here, and then hit the letter A. Let's see if that works. That did not work. Okay, so I do actually have to create a group then. So we're going to select our castle, and we can do right click it, group, quick clipping group. There we go. And then I think I can drag this down now and then turn on its letter A. There we go. So now it's only affecting the castle. So these quick clipping groups, are the key to just affecting the castle. This one, I forget what that one was. Was that my color adjustment? No, my color adjustment seems to have been destroyed in that process somehow. Let me try one more time just to see if I can get that to work again. Oh, you know what? It might be inside this little down-facing arrow. I'm going to try one more time to see, because The interface is a little bit misleading. Quick clipping group. There we go. No, it seems to destroy that initial adjustment. So that's unfortunate. I'm going to have to remake that one. But it does mean that I can put this down in this quick clipping group and enable that letter A. Doesn't even look like it requires me to enable the letter A, but it works now. Let's go ahead and add another one then. It was a second transparent, or sorry, a filter mask. Filter layer. And we had a color adjustment. That's what it was. Oh, interesting. The color adjustment here is just a arc. Oh, you know what? Color adjustment seems to be very close to the curves in Photoshop. I actually like that more. So okay, we'll get rid of this one then. Just delete that. Remove. Okay. This mask layer isn't really necessary. That was just created by the creation of the group. And now this is our color adjustment layer, which we should be able to get by just selecting it and choosing layer properties. Yep, there we go. Okay. Oops. So now this is the one that can affect the overall contrast. So I think what we did last time is I darkened it just a little bit and then suppressed the lightest colors just a tiny bit like that. And I don't think that I lightened the shadows at all. I think I just left them alone. Yeah. That looks okay. Okay. And now we would want to add a filter layer. We want to get like a color balance. There's the color balance. Okay. I'm not sure. I think I may have inadvertently already applied my previous color balance here. So now it's starting to look a bit crazy. But all of the function is here. So let's see, maybe I need to undo just a little bit of the crazy amount of color balance I've got. Add a little bit more blue and green to bring it back. Not too much. And I think it definitely needs to be darkened still. But with this one should persist now. So there it is. We can turn it off and on. And it should only be affecting the castle. Let's test that by, I'm going to make it crazy. Let's turn it just bright red. Okay, so now the castle is bright red, but the background is left alone. So you can see that this is only affecting the castle layer. So we'll cancel that so that we don't actually make that effect. Trying to see what is missing from this. I think the shadows still need to come up just a bit. There we go. That's starting to blend in pretty nicely. And noodling this is really up to you, but you can play with it a little bit and see what's required. Just looks a bit too bright for the scene sometimes. Just say okay with that. Okay. So I'm not sure if there's anything else you guys would need to see as far as doing our assignment in Krita. That's kind of all of the features that we explored in Photoshop. We can place photographs in, scale and place them actually more conveniently. We can adjust their brightness and darkness. We can color adjust them. And then of course, just like in any painting really, I could put a new layer beneath the castle and I could paint shadows right on. Let's just do a digital airbrush. Shrink that size a bit. So we can have a little cast shadow behind this. And then I would probably just want to change it to multiply and bring the opacity down a bit so it's more subtle. Okay? But all the same stuff can be done in Krita. Okay? Any questions, you guys, about how to make that stuff happen? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are just referring to what the color already is, like how bright or dark it already is, and adjusting that group specifically. So when I bring up this, we are taking all the darkest colors when we're adjusting the shadows section. I guess it's the third of the color range that is darkest, and we're only affecting them. So if I slide this to cyan, see the parts that are changing? They were already the darkest colors, but these other colors over here are not changing. Does that make sense? And the reason they separate it out that way is because your shadow colors, right, are going to be affected by sort of environment bounce lighting or the sky. Your midtones are actually going to be the visible appearance of the object for the most part, and your highlights are going to be the shiny bits, the parts that are reflecting things. And so adjusting them independently gives you sort of a control over your ambient lighting. Like if we did blue highlight colors and red shadows, we have some sort of weird studio lighting going on. But that's a really extreme example. Okay? But good question. Thank you for asking. Anybody else got questions about how to do this assignment or whatnot? If not, then that's going to be the end of the demonstration. It's going to be a real short one. You guys all confident doing the assignment? Know what you're going to do?
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much? All right then. Then that's going to be it for this demo. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording there.